Good morning!
Morning!
Welcome to all those watching at home. It's a beautiful day here, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Say a big thank you to Barb and Joe and Gary for the extra work they're putting in today to help us worship out here. Thank you guys. Coming to help set up and shortly after church and after the next service, Sharon and I will be driving to Wyoming.
Oh,
And
what part of Wyoming are you going to, Pastor?
Alta.
Huh?
Alta.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of by Idaho.
Yeah.
It's the corner of Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana. And it is the Grand Tetons, and we are going to the Grand Targhee Resort for a theological conference for my doctoral studies. And very excited about that.
Beautiful country out there. Beautiful.
I'm trying to think the name of that colonel.
Well, if it comes to you, just let us know. We have a distinguished guest with us this morning. It is my mentor in hospice, and I mentioned her in worship last week, Martha. She is going to be preaching next week here, so come back and get a second opinion. It's always good. All right. Well, let us begin our worship with our call to worship. You can remain seated. Let us draw near to God.
Let us put down the ways we carry.
Let us open ourselves to God's Spirit.
Let us come again to be filled.
Open our hearts to receive your love.
Make us a vessel in our love for the world.
Our gathering song.
America, God shed His grace.
Play ball. Oh. I believe in God, the Creator, whose love is the life force of the universe, who believes in us, trusts us, and empowers us, who believes in us and through us, and fills us with wonder. I believe in Jesus, God's own Son, who showed through his life the heart and character of God, who lived to raise up the lowly, loved those unloved, fed those who hungered, and healed those with sickness, who taught adults and laughed with children, who was crucified for speaking truth to power, who was raised by God to live forever, and who inspires us to truly live. I believe in God's Spirit, who brings the mystery of God into our hearts, who guides us through a familiar whisper of truth, who sparks our creative passions, who comes to all in the bread and wine, who gathers us into one family, and sends us out to be the good news. Our scripture for today is one verse long. So last week when I told you it doesn't get any shorter than this, it does. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, male or female slave, ox, donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. I want to start with a story, a couple stories actually. When I was a youth minister in Menominee Falls at Holy Cross Lutheran, on the corner of Pilgrim and Appleton, roughly, the church had a parsonage. It was a real nice brick ranch, kind of mid-century modern, and the pastor who they had just hired wanted to stay in his house and not take the parsonage, and so the youth minister gets to take the parsonage. And I thought that was a great honor, until I found out that along with getting to stay in the parsonage means getting to mow the church lawn. But they did have a really nice riding lawnmower, a John Deere. And so it was my job to mow the entire church lawn, and it is a big ground, kind of like the church here. And next door to the church was my house and backyard, and next door to me lived a older gentleman with his wife, retired, and I never met the guy. We didn't even have two words to say to each other the whole time. We lived right next door, but we had a peculiar relationship. If I was out there on a Friday, which was my day off, mowing the lawn, you could set your watch by it. On Saturday morning, he was out there mowing his lawn. If I waited to Saturday to do it because I had something or I was out of town, he would wait till Sunday. If I waited till Sunday afternoon, he would wait till Monday. If I waited till, say, Tuesday, he would be out there. He would not go longer than Monday, and he would mow his lawn, and then I would mow mine on Tuesday. So mine would look fresher than his. And then he would be out there on Wednesday. We had this little thing. And I was so envious because he was an organic lawn guy. No chemicals. He had his little, I don't know what you call it, for digging dandelions. And he'd pull them out by the root, and he had a beautiful looking yard. And I always thought, this guy's got it made. He's got a beautiful yard. The church paid someone to come in with green chemicals, and they put it all over the church and in my backyard. I was not a fan of that. So I always kind of envied him. And one day, I found out that the man had died. And so I thought, well, gee, I should go and pay my respects. So I went and I met his wife, and I said, I'm really sorry. I didn't really know your husband, and she goes, you're the lawn mowing guy. And I said, yeah, my name is Tim. And she said, oh, my husband, he hated you. Because you always wanted to have the better looking lawn, and it was the bane of his existence. He hated lawn care. And I was shocked. I thought the guy lived for it because he was out there all the time. Second story. Forgot my second story. This is not going well.
I like the third story.
So this idea about coveting, I'll come back to the second story. I'm sure I'll remember it. When Moses gave the Ten Commandments, there wasn't a real good way, if you broke the commandments, to remain a part of the group. They didn't really have this all worked out yet. I don't recommend you do this, at least not before bed. But if you read the text after the Ten Commandments, when Moses comes down the mountain and he gives them to the Israelites, he realizes that they have melted a golden calf out of earrings that they had stolen from the Egyptians, and they were worshiping this calf. And Moses came down, and the way he saw it, because they had done this, they all deserved to die. So he killed 300 people right on the spot, right when he got down. Not a very good... Like, if you have the Ten Commandments, you kind of have to have a way to treat those who break the commandments and restore them gently to community, right? Moses had really thought this all the way through. And eventually, they settled on this special day where everyone would take a couple of days and they'd think about their lives and what commandments they had broken in the last year. And then they would find an animal, a goat, and they would lay their sins, their broken promises, their broken covenants on this animal, and then somebody would lead the animal out of the community into the wilderness and off a cliff or something. You didn't want the animal reappearing. That would be bad. And it was a way for them once a year to get a fresh start and to welcome each other back in community. And they would do this by having a large celebration of unity, that they had all made it through another year and God's faithfulness to forgive them as God's people. And it was a big celebration. There is a philosopher named René Girard. I thought René was a woman, but René is actually a French man's name. And René Girard was a studier of philosophy and religion, not necessarily a religious person himself. And so he was looking at what all religions have in common. One of the things that he found, going back as far as you could go with records, is that religious communities had a way of using violence as a way of bringing them together, the group together. They would single out an animal, or at one time it was a person, and they would rally around scapegoating either an actual goat or a person. Now you remember the story about Abraham, and one day God comes to him and says, "Abraham, I need you to sacrifice your son." And what did Abraham say? Okay, I knew this was coming eventually, right? This is how it works. The gods get angry, you got to sacrifice a live human being, probably the one you love more than anything. That's just how God must be. And so he packs up his son and they go off to a mountainside. And as he's ready to plunge the knife down into Isaac, God says, "Hold on." And he shows him over here in the thicket, there is a ram that is caught. And just like that, the world evolved from sacrificing humans to sacrificing animals. This is a really good big step in this idea. And so for thousands of years, the Israelites would sacrifice either a scapegoat at first, or later after they built a temple, they would have all kinds of animals that people could sacrifice. People would come and they would pour out their heart, lay down their sins, and have an animal sacrificed. And because of the blood of that animal, you could be reconnected to God. Rene Girard found out that all religions have some version of this. For many, especially early ancient religions, it was going off to war that would unite them. They would fight against another tribe and thus become a band of brothers. But Rene Girard had an epiphany when he started studying the religion we know as Christianity. Because Christianity is based on Jesus, who didn't sacrifice anyone, who never scapegoated anyone. In fact, he lived to lift up the very people everyone else was scapegoating. And he himself became that scapegoat. And today, Christians everywhere who have not evolved beyond this will say that Jesus takes all of our sins on him every time we put them on Jesus, and he is our scapegoat. Probably 99% of Christianity still does this. I believe Jesus did what he did to end this practice once and for all. To end saying that the solution to a violence issue, a violence problem, is through sacrificial violence. We can do better than that, can't we? I think we can. Now, what Rene Girard realized is when you go to a group of people and you tell them that what you're doing is you're scapegoating this person or this thing in order for you to find connection and unity, the scapegoating of this person no longer works. Once your eyes have been opened to understand how this works, it no longer is appealing. It takes something else. Oh, I remember the second story now. Sharon and I were in Mexico on vacation, and it was the NBA playoffs, and we were there, and I didn't have a Bucks t-shirt yet because they weren't good for so long. But I did have a Wisconsin Badgers shirt, and so I wore that, and we got to this little bar that looked like it might promise showing the game on one of their TVs, and there was another guy, and he had another Wisconsin. It might have been a Brewers shirt, or maybe it was a Packers shirt, I don't remember. But we saw each other from across the bar, and we realized right away we are going to be friends, right? And the reason is because we both hate the Bears and the Vikings, and we hate Tom Brady. Everybody hates Tom Brady. So we all can gather around that. You understand what I'm saying about how we can scapegoat somebody in order to connect with each other. It happens all the time. The best people at doing this, and I hope, and I say this with the intention of when you see it, it won't work anymore. The very best people at doing this are the political television stations. They scapegoat the other side in order to make a band of brothers of people on their side. And they're so good at it. The other day I was walking and I heard this guy talking, and he said, "You know what's wrong with our country? It's all those immigrants coming in from Mexico. They all have COVID. They don't have to get vaccine. I try to get into the country. I got to take a COVID test. I got to have a vaccine." And he goes, "That's what's wrong with it. This country is going downhill because of them." And I'm thinking to myself, what, you want to be a migrant worker in a field in Colorado somewhere? Is that why they're taking your job? Without them, your life would not be as good. The reality of it is that we celebrate the 4th of July this weekend, which is our independence from a mother who wanted to own us. Well, many of these migrants, maybe they lived in Venezuela or Mexico or Chile, were peacefully living in their town, and the cartel decided that they needed some more workers, and so they came to enslave them, and they often shot the men in the village and raped the women, and whoever could get out had to get out. And they're standing at the border, and what are we going to do? We're going to point at them and say, they're the problem. They're why we have high gas prices, or whatever you want to say. It's easy to be right and scapegoat somebody, but it's time to stop. Jesus died so that our eyes would be open to understanding that scapegoating violence is not the answer. So what is the answer? To be inspired by the love that God has for each of us. To be inspired by the witness of God's goodness through Jesus. The non-violent God of love who calls us every day to give our lives to make the world better. Not to scapegoat people, and trust me, I do it all the time. I don't even think about it. I see somebody and that's in my mind or out loud, that's what I do. But we have to keep reminding ourselves to see that and realize it doesn't work. It doesn't make us feel better, truly. It just erodes them and us. So on this Independence Day, I hope that we can all come together, not because of some way of making a common enemy, but because of our love for each other and our love for God. Amen.